Now for something a little different today. Recently I was watching a video here on YouTube on how to get commissions, as this is definitely something I want to pursue, at least as a part-time career if not full-time. The video I'm referring to is called Where to Find Art Clients and Higher Paying Art Commissions by the Art Mentor. And it was a very good and very useful watch, and I'll link it below, as I would 100% recommend watching it if you're looking to get into commissions. So one of the bits of advice that the Art Mentor gave was to specialize and to build a portfolio off of that specialty. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I love making up new and interesting creatures, often by splicing together various characteristics of different animals, thinking about how that characteristic will influence their behavior, their diet, and things like that. I went over onto a website called Unsplash, which is very similar to Pixabay, in that it contains a lot of royalty-free images for artists to use as reference, and I began looking around for a good base animal. That is, the one I'll use for the overall posture. I settled on a rhino and started adding in different attributes to create something new, resulting in this creature. I began by sketching in the overall pose and some of the background elements. Once this was done, I lowered the opacity and started on the head. I used a similar approach to the monkey I made yesterday, where I would block in the color of each bit before adding in the highlights and shading before moving on to the next bit. You can see I'm using pale yellows to put in the sunlight falling on the right side of the animal's face and later the body. For its hardened plate on the front of its face, I had been looking at the pachycephalosaur, a dinosaur with a similar bony structure making up the dome of its skull. The use of this bony skull is not universally agreed on, but in the case of our creature here, it will be used to ram fruit-bearing trees to knock the fruit from its lofty perch where it can feed upon it. It prefers large, soft, juicy fruits which serve to give it both food and hydration, though it supplements this by drinking from rivers. For the texture, I used the crest of the cassowary as reference. It has large ridged flaps on either side of its large head that, like in the elephants it was drawn from, helps with thermoregulation, keeping it cool. It has a large body with the top parts covered in a thin covering of hair to help keep off the worst of the sun's rays. For the fruit, I used some large juicy plums as inspiration, but bulked up their size a good bit. The top one I ended up gouging out just to show our creature having just taken a bite. Then I turned my attention to the background, starting by painting in the cluster of trees behind our creature. I reversed the lighting and shading on them to match our creature with the sun shining from the right. I then painted in the leaves before turning my attention to the foreground. I wanted some leaves on the left, close to the camera, to give some illusion of depth and make the composition a bit nicer. The main grass bit was made of a brown underlayer with a green overlayer, so I could show the mud poking through where the grass had grown a bit more sparsely. It was also around here I added in some shadows under our creature to firmly plant them in the scene. Then it was time to add in the sky, which I did using a gradient, having the colours go from a deep aqua blue at the top to a very pale blue towards the horizon. Then I began adding in the trees behind. For the most part I kept them fairly gestural, giving them more of an idea of foliage than painting in every tiny leaf, partly because this would be very time consuming and partly because I didn't want to draw the eye away from our creature. The last steps were to add in the clouds, which I did with a light and fluffy brush, and putting in some grass around the feet and the fruit to show that the creature was standing in the grass and not on it, which would look quite flat. And with that I was done. Let's have a look at the final piece.